The text on his phone said, "Last week was incredible, baby. Can't wait to do that again." Problem was, last week he told me he was in Miami for business. I was holding his phone when it lit up. And in less than 60 seconds, my billionaire fiancé would throw me out of his car in the middle of a violent storm, call me a nobody, and drive away. What he didn't know was that 7 years later, broken and desperate, he'd walk into a therapist's office and find me sitting across the desk, Dr. Aleigha Randall, the woman he said would be nothing without him. The storm wasn't supposed to be this bad. Light rain, they'd said, maybe some wind. But as I stood on the side of Highway 7, soaked to the bone in a designer evening gown, I realized the weather forecast had been as wrong as everything else in my life. My name is Aleigha Randall, and 30 seconds ago, I was engaged to one of the richest men in the city. 30 seconds ago, I was planning a wedding at his mother's Connecticut estate. 30 seconds ago, I thought I understood my life. Then I made the mistake of picking up Brennan Dobson's phone. The text was explicit, intimate, from a woman named Johanna, reminiscing about last week when he told me he was on a business trip to Miami. And before I could even process what I was reading, Brennan's hand shot across the car and ripped the phone from my grip. "That's private," he snarled, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "Private? Brennan, who is she? What is this?" He didn't answer, just pulled the car over, violently, the tires screeching against wet asphalt. Rain hammered the windows as he stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. "Get out." 2 words. That's all it took to end 2 years of my life. "What? Brennan, please, just talk to me." "You're nobody without me, Aleigha." He turned then, and his eyes held nothing but contempt. "No career, no connections, no future. I made you. And without me, you have nothing." He reached across and opened my door. "Get out." The storm wasn't supposed to be this violent. Weather reports had called for light rain, maybe some wind. But standing on the side of Highway 7, in what felt like the rage of nature itself, I realized the meteorologist had gotten it as wrong as I'd gotten Brennan. My sister's phone rang 4 times before she picked up. "Lee? Girl, it's almost midnight, what?" "Layla." My voice cracked around her name. "I need you to come get me." Silence. Then, "Where are you? What happened?" "Highway 7, near the exit for Riverside." I wrapped my free arm around myself, but it did nothing against the cold. My evening dress, the black Versace Brennan had bought me for tonight's charity gala, clung to my skin like a second layer of shame. "He threw me out of the car." "He what?" Layla's voice sharpened into something dangerous. "Brennan threw you out? In this weather?" There was a text. I watched another car pass without slowing, its headlights briefly illuminating the rain before abandoning me to darkness again. On his phone, from her, talking about last week when he was supposed to be in Miami for business, talking about... I couldn't finish. The words, the explicit, intimate details, were branded into my memory. "I'm coming right now. Stay on the phone with me." But I couldn't. My hands were shaking too hard, and not just from the cold. "I'll call you back. I just need a minute." I ended the call before she could protest. A nobody. That's what he'd called me. "You're nothing without me, Aleigha. No career, no connections, no life. I made you, and I can unmake you just as easily." 6 months. We were supposed to be married in 6 months. I'd already ordered my dress, a custom Pnina Tornai with hand-sewn crystals that caught light like promises. My mother had started planning the menu. His mother had insisted on flying in her event coordinator from Paris. All of it, a lie. Thunder cracked overhead, and I flinched. My phone buzzed with a text from Layla. 20 minutes away. Don't you dare move. 20 minutes. I could survive 20 minutes. I'd survived tonight, hadn't I? Survived the moment I saw that text and watched my entire future dissolve. Survived Brennan's cold eyes when I asked him to explain. Survived the way he'd pulled over, not gently, and told me to get out. Survived the sick feeling in my stomach when I realized he was serious. Please, I'd begged. Brennan, please, just talk to me. Let me understand what's happening. You want to understand? He'd laughed, and it was the cruelest sound I'd ever heard. Understand this. I'm done. With you. With this charade. Johanna knows what she's worth. She doesn't question me. She doesn't need anything from me except what I choose to give. Johanna. I hadn't known her name until that moment. Another car approached, slowing this time. My heart lurched with hope before I saw it wasn't Layla's Honda. A white Mercedes pulled onto the shoulder ahead of me, and my stomach knotted with a different kind of fear. This road was empty. This storm was violent. I was alone. But it was a woman who emerged, older, maybe 60, holding an umbrella that immediately inverted in the wind. Honey, she called over the storm. Are you all right? Do you need help? I wanted to say yes, wanted to collapse into the kindness of a stranger and let someone else solve this. But something in me, some last shred of pride, made me shake my head. My sister's coming, I called back. She'll be here soon. The woman hesitated, clearly unconvinced, but finally nodded and returned to her car. She didn't drive away, though. She waited, hazard lights blinking, until Layla's headlights finally appeared through the sheets of rain. I'd remember that later. Remember that a complete stranger had shown me more care in 5 minutes than the man I'd loved had shown me in 2 years. Layla burst from her car before it fully stopped, running toward me with a blanket. Oh my God, Lee. Oh my God, look at you. I let her wrap the blanket around my shoulders. Let her guide me to the passenger seat. Let her blast the heat and start cursing Brennan with creative combinations of words I'd never heard her use before. But I didn't cry. Not yet. Because somewhere between the moment he'd driven away and the moment Layla arrived, something had crystallized inside me. He'd called me nobody, and I was going to prove him wrong. Layla didn't take me home. She took me to her apartment in the Brookside district, a modest 2-bedroom she shared with her girlfriend Kaylee. Safe, anonymous. Somewhere Brennan wouldn't think to look, not that I believed he'd bother searching. Shower first, Layla commanded, pushing me toward the bathroom. Then we talk. I stood under water hot enough to burn, watching the rain and makeup and expensive perfume. Clive Christian, $400 a bottle, Brennan's favorite. Circle the drain. My skin turned pink, then red, but I couldn't feel warm. The cold had settled somewhere deeper than my bones. When I finally emerged, Kaylee had tea waiting, and Layla had that look on her face, the one that meant she was about to say something I wouldn't want to hear. You're staying here, she announced before I could sit. Not for a night, for as long as it takes. Layla. Don't. She held up a hand. Don't you dare tell me you'll be fine. Don't tell me you'll figure it out. That man threw you out of a moving vehicle. It wasn't moving. In a goddamn hurricane, Aleigha. Her voice cracked. Do you understand what could have happened? You could have been hit, kidnapped, assaulted, worse. She pressed her palms against her eyes. I almost lost you tonight because some billionaire with a god complex decided you were disposable. Kaylee squeezed Layla's shoulder, then looked at me. What she's trying to say is we love you, and we've got space. Take it. I wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some dignity, some independence. But the truth was I had nowhere else to go. Brennan's penthouse had been our home for the past year. My name wasn't on any lease, any deed, any document that mattered. My belongings were still there. Clothes, books, the laptop he'd bought me, the jewelry he'd draped around my neck like ownership. All of it felt contaminated now. Okay, I whispered. Thank you. That first week blurred together. I called in sick to the museum where I worked part-time, a cushy position Brennan had arranged through a donor friend. By day 3, my supervisor called back. Aleigha, I'm so sorry, but we're going to have to let you go. Budget cuts. Budget cuts. The museum had just received a $15 million endowment. But Brennan's influence stretched far, and his message was clear. Without him, I had nothing. He'd been right about that, at least temporarily. Layla found me staring at my phone that afternoon, scrolling through photos I should have deleted. Brennan and me at the Hamptons, Brennan and me at his mother's estate in Connecticut, Brennan and me at charity galas where I smiled like I belonged in his world. Delete them, Layla said quietly. I will. No, right now. I'll watch you do it. So I did. One by one, I watched 2 years of my life disappear. And with each deleted photo, something strange happened. The weight on my chest lightened just slightly. Good, Layla said when the last one vanished. Now delete his number. That one was harder. Deleting his number felt final in a way the photos hadn't. It meant accepting this was real, not some nightmare I'd wake from with his arms around me and an explanation that made sense. But I did it. Watched his contact information disappear into digital nothing. What now? I asked. Layla sat beside me on the couch, pulling her knees up. Now? Now you rest, heal, and then we figure out who Aleigha Randall is when she's not defined by some man's money. I don't know who that is. Neither do I, she admitted, but I'm excited to meet her. The second week, I started going through the practical devastation. Bank accounts, all in his name, though I'd had access. Credit cards, all his, though he'd given me my own. The apartment I'd shared with him, his property. Even my car was registered under his company. I had my clothes from the gala, now ruined. My phone, paid through his corporate account. And $847 in a checking account I'd opened years ago, before Brennan, when I still thought like someone who might need her own money. $847. That's what I was worth on paper. But Kaylee, who worked in finance, sat down with me on day 9 and mapped out a different picture. You have a bachelor's degree in psychology, right? She asked, pen poised over a notepad. Yes, but… No buts. That's yours. He can't take your education. What else? I worked at a crisis center before Brennan, volunteer stuff in college. Good. Marketable skills. What did you want to be, before him? The question struck something tender. A therapist. I wanted to get my master's, maybe my doctorate, work with people who'd been through trauma. Kaylee looked up and something sharp flashed in her eyes. Then that's what you're going to do. I can't afford it. There are programs, scholarships, grants, student loans that don't require a co-signer with a private jet. She leaned forward. Here's what I know about people like Brennan. They convince you that you need them, that without their money, their connections, their approval, you're nothing. But you know what the real power move is? I shook my head. Proving they were wrong. Not to them, they'll never admit it anyway. Proving it to yourself. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Kaylee had said, about who I'd wanted to be before I'd let Brennan's world consume mine. At 2 a.m., I opened my laptop, the old one I'd had in college, buried in Layla's storage closet. I searched graduate programs in psychology, clinical mental health counseling, requirements, deadlines. Applications were due in 3 months for the fall semester. 3 months to build a life from $847 and spite. I started typing. The rejection from the museum wasn't the last domino to fall. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched Brennan systematically erase me from the circles I'd once moved through, the charity board I'd volunteered with. We've decided to go in a different direction. The networking group for young professionals, my membership was under review. Even the yoga studio I'd attended for 2 years suddenly couldn't find my account in their system. Brennan Dobson's reach was long, and his pettiness longer. But every door he slammed shut did something unexpected. It made me angry. Not the hot, impulsive kind of anger. The cold, calculated kind. The kind that got up at 5 a.m. and went running even though I hated running. The kind that applied to 17 graduate programs instead of 3. The kind that took every no and filed it away as fuel. Layla noticed the shift. "You're different," she said one morning, watching me meal prep for the week with militant precision. "Different how?" "Scary different. Like you're planning something." I was. I just didn't have words for it yet. I found work at a coffee shop called Grounds and Pages, a combination cafe and used bookstore near the university. The owner, an older woman named Barbara, hired me on the spot when I mentioned my psychology degree. "My daughter's in therapy," she said, wiping down the espresso machine. "Saved her life. You're good people, I can tell. Welcome aboard." The pay was $13 an hour plus tips. I worked 45 hours a week, sometimes more. My feet ached constantly, and I smelled like coffee grounds and old books. It was the opposite of Brennan's world of catered events and designer everything. It was honest work, and I'd never felt prouder. The graduate applications became my evening ritual. After shifts at Grounds and Pages, I'd come home to Layla's apartment and write essays about why I wanted to help people heal from trauma. I didn't mention that I was writing from fresh wounds. Didn't mention the storm, or the text message, or the man who'd told me I was nothing. I wrote about the crisis center where I'd volunteered. About the woman who'd come in after her boyfriend broke her jaw, whispering that maybe she deserved it. About helping her see she hadn't. About watching her leave 3 months later with her head up and a restraining order in her purse. I wrote about wanting to be that person for others. The one who helped them see their worth when the world tried to convince them they had none. My personal statement basically wrote itself. By mid-March, I'd submitted applications to programs across 3 states, some elite, some not. Some full-ride scholarship opportunities, some that would bury me in debt. I didn't care. I applied to all of them, and then I waited. The waiting was harder than the doing. In the quiet moments between customers, my mind would drift. I'd wonder if Brennan ever thought about me, if he felt any remorse. If Johanna knew she was with a man who'd thrown his previous fiancé out in a storm. Probably not. Men like Brennan didn't tell inconvenient truths. One afternoon in early April, a man came into Grounds and Pages right before closing. Mid-30s, nice smile, carrying a worn copy of Man's Search for Meaning. "Good taste," I said, nodding at the book as I rang him up. He glanced down like he'd forgotten he was holding it. "Oh, this? Yeah, I try to reread it every year. Reminds me what matters when things feel impossible." Something in his voice made me look up, really look. He had kind eyes, the kind that had seen difficulty but hadn't let it make them hard. "Rough year?" I asked. "Rough decade, maybe." He laughed, but it wasn't bitter. "Starting over at 36, building a business from scratch. Most days I'm not sure if I'm brave or just stubborn. Both, probably. The best things require both." He studied me for a moment. "You sound like you know something about that." "Starting over?" I felt my mouth curve into something that almost resembled a real smile. "Yeah, I'm learning." He paid for his book and a coffee, then paused at the door. "I'm Trenton, by the way. I'll probably be back. Best coffee I've found in this neighborhood. Aleigha, and we're here every day except Sundays." After he left, Barbara emerged from the back room with a knowing look. "That man was flirting with you. He was buying coffee." "He was buying coffee and flirting with you. There's a difference." She handed me a rag to wipe down tables. "Handsome, too. Nice smile. Did you get his number?" "Barbara, I'd just escaped a relationship with—" I stopped. I'd never told her about Brennan. Never told anyone at the shop. Here, I was just Aleigha who made excellent lattes and could recommend books based on vibes. "With someone who didn't deserve you," Barbara finished gently. "I can tell. But that doesn't mean you stop living, honey." That night, I got an email from Riverside State University's Clinical Mental Health Counseling Program. My hands shook as I opened it. Dear Ms. Randall, congratulations. I read the word 3 times before it sank in. Acceptance. Full academic scholarship based on merit. Stipend for living expenses through a graduate assistantship. Start date, August 15th, 4 months away. I called Layla, and she screamed so loud Kaylee came running from the shower thinking someone had died. We danced around the apartment like idiots, and for the first time since that night in the storm, I cried. But not from grief. From possibility. The next morning, Trenton came back to Grounds and Pages. Same time, same kind smile. You look different today, he said, as I made his usual order. Black coffee, 2 sugars. Different how? Lighter. Like something good happened. I handed him his coffee and on impulse said, I got into graduate school, full scholarship. I start in August. His face broke into the most genuine smile I'd seen in months. That's incredible. What are you studying? Clinical mental health counseling. I want to be a therapist. The world needs more good therapists. He took a sip of his coffee, then seemed to gather courage. Listen, this might be forward, but would you want to get dinner sometime? Not here. Actual food at an actual restaurant? I should have said no. Should have protected myself, kept my walls up. But something about Trenton felt safe, uncomplicated, real. Yes, I heard myself say. I'd like that. He grinned. Friday? 7? Friday works. After he left, Barbara materialized again. See? Living. I was. Against all odds. Despite everything Brennan had tried to take from me, I was living. And somewhere in a penthouse across town, he had no idea that the woman he'd called nobody was becoming someone extraordinary. Friday arrived wrapped in the kind of spring evening that felt like a promise. I stood in front of Layla's full-length mirror, second-guessing my outfit for the 3rd time. You look beautiful, Kaylee said from the doorway. Stop overthinking. I'd chosen a simple navy dress, one of the few things I'd managed to retrieve from Brennan's penthouse through his assistant, who'd met me in the lobby with 2 boxes of my belongings, like I was being erased from a crime scene. The dress was mine from before him, back when I dressed for myself. What if this is a mistake? I asked. What if I'm not ready? Then you'll figure that out over dinner, Layla said, appearing beside Kaylee. But Lee, you've been ready. You just needed to believe it. Trenton picked me up at 7 sharp, driving a modest Toyota that had clearly seen some miles. No chauffeur, no town car, just him, holding the passenger door open with that easy smile. You look amazing, he said simply. No performance, no calculation, just a compliment that landed like truth. He took me to a small Italian restaurant in the Arts District. The kind with mismatched chairs and candles in wine bottles, and a grandmother who came out of the kitchen to hug regular customers. We were seated by the window, and I watched the street outside. People walking dogs, couples holding hands, life happening without drama or destruction. So, Trenton said once we'd ordered. Graduate school. Tell me about that. I told him about the acceptance letter, the scholarship, the assistantship. Told him I'd be working with the campus counseling center while completing my degree. Told him I wanted to specialize in trauma therapy eventually. That's serious work, he said. Important work. What drew you to it? I hesitated. The real answer involved a storm and a man who'd tried to break me. But something about Trenton's open expression made me want to offer truth, even if not the whole truth yet. I think everyone carries something, I said carefully, some wound they're trying to heal from. I want to help people carry it better. Help them see that what happened to them doesn't define what they're worth. He was quiet for a moment, really hearing me. That's beautiful. The world's lucky you're choosing this. What about you? I redirected. You mentioned building a business? His face lit up. Yeah, software development, custom solutions for small nonprofits, organizations that can't afford big tech companies but need solid systems. I worked in corporate for years, made good money, but it felt empty. So I walked away 6 months ago and started my own thing. That's terrifying. Absolutely. He laughed. I'm basically eating ramen and hoping I land enough clients to make rent. But I wake up excited now. That's worth something. Our food arrived. Simple pasta, fresh bread, nothing Instagram-worthy or overpriced. Just good. We ate and talked, and I realized how long it had been since I'd had a conversation that felt like connection instead of performance. With Brennan, every dinner had been theater. Who was watching us? What were we signaling? Every outfit, every laugh, every touch calculated for audience. This was just two people talking. It felt revolutionary. Can I ask you something? Trenton said as we shared tiramisu. And you can tell me it's too personal. Okay. Earlier, when you said you were starting over, there was something in your voice, like you weren't just talking about graduate school. I set down my fork. Here it was, the moment where I had to decide how much to reveal. I got out of a bad relationship, I said slowly. Someone who made me forget who I was, who convinced me I needed him to be somebody. I met Trenton's eyes. Turns out I didn't. He nodded, no pity in his expression, just understanding. I know something about that. My ex-wife, we divorced 3 years ago. She wasn't cruel, but she needed me to be someone I wasn't. Bigger job, bigger house, bigger everything. I nearly lost myself trying to become her version of success. Is that why you started over? Part of it. But mostly? He leaned back. I woke up one morning and realized I was building someone else's dream. I didn't even know what mine looked like anymore. And now? Now I'm figuring it out. Some days are harder than others, but at least when I look in the mirror, I recognize the guy looking back. Something in my chest loosened. He understood. Not the specifics, not the storm or the billionaire or the public humiliation, but the core of it, the loss of self, the climb back. We talked until the restaurant started putting chairs on tables. Trenton walked me to his car, and we stood there for a moment in the warm night air. I'd really like to do this again, he said. If you would. I would, I said, and meant it. He drove me back to Layla's, and when he walked me to the door, he didn't try to kiss me. Just squeezed my hand and said, "Good luck with everything, Aleigha. I have a feeling you're going to change a lot of lives." Inside, Layla was waiting on the couch with Kaylee, both of them pretending to watch TV but clearly waiting for a report. "Well?" Layla demanded. I sank into the armchair, kicking off my shoes. "He's good. Really good. Kind. Honest. He listens like he actually cares what I'm saying." "So the opposite of Brennan," Kaylee said. "The opposite of Brennan," I confirmed. Over the next few weeks, Trenton and I fell into an easy rhythm. Coffee dates between my shifts, long walks through the park, phone calls that stretched past midnight. He met me where I was, broke, focused, building something from rubble. Never tried to fix me or save me or speed up my healing. He told me about his business struggles. I told him about my acceptance. He celebrated my small victories like they were major triumphs. I did the same for him when he landed his third client. We built something together without realizing we were building it. No grand declarations, no pressure, just two people who'd been broken by different hands, learning to trust again. One night in late May, we were sitting on a bench by the river, watching the sun set over the water. Trenton had just told me about landing a major nonprofit client, his biggest contract yet. "You're going to make it," I said. "Your business. It's going to work." "So are you," he replied. "You're going to be an incredible therapist." "How do you know?" He turned to face me. "Because you understand something most people don't. That healing isn't about forgetting what hurt you. It's about becoming someone stronger because of it. I felt tears prick my eyes. Trenton, you don't have to say anything, he said gently. I just wanted you to know. I see you, Aleigha, the real you, and she's remarkable. If you're still with me after all these twists, drop a comment. I love hearing from you, and your thoughts mean everything as this story unfolds. That night, I deleted the last remaining photo I'd hidden in a folder on my phone. Brennan and me at his mother's garden party, his arm around my waist like ownership. I didn't need to remember him anymore. I had someone who saw me as a person, not a possession. And I was finally becoming the woman I'd always had the potential to be, the one Brennan had been too blind to see. Summer arrived, and with it, a quiet kind of magic. I moved into a tiny studio apartment near campus, 320 square feet, that cost most of my coffee shop earnings, but it was mine. My name on the lease, my key in the lock, my space that no one could take away. Trenton helped me move in, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs without complaint. Layla and Kaylee brought housewarming gifts, dish towels, a small succulent, a framed print that said, "She believed she could, so she did." It's cheesy, Layla admitted, but accurate. I hung it above my second-hand desk where I'd be doing my graduate coursework. A reminder that I'd clawed my way here from the side of a highway in the rain. My relationship with Trenton deepened in ways that felt fundamentally different from what I'd had with Brennan. There was no game playing, no power dynamics, no wondering where I stood. When Trenton said he'd call, he called. When he made plans, he kept them. When I needed space to study or process or just exist, he gave it without making me feel guilty. I've never dated someone this healthy, I confessed one night over takeout in my new apartment. He laughed. Is that a compliment? The highest one I can give. We were sitting on my floor because I only owned one chair. He'd brought Chinese food, and we ate straight from the containers like college kids, even though we were both supposedly adults. Can I tell you something? He asked, setting down his lo mein. Always. When I first saw you at the coffee shop, you looked like you were carrying the weight of the world. But every time I came back, you seemed a little lighter, like you were shedding something heavy. Piece by piece. He met my eyes. Watching you become yourself has been the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. My throat tightened. Trenton, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. Whoever made you think you weren't enough was wrong. You're extraordinary, Aleigha, with or without anyone else. I kissed him then, not because I owed him anything or because the moment demanded it, but because I wanted to, because he saw me, truly saw me, and chose me anyway. We became inseparable after that, partners in the truest sense. He'd work on client projects while I studied for my graduate courses. We'd quiz each other, him on code, me on counseling theories. We cooked cheap meals together and celebrated small victories and held each other through moments when the past tried to creep back in. Graduate school started in August, and it was everything I'd hoped for and harder than I'd imagined. The coursework was intense: theories of personality, psychopathology, counseling techniques. I was surrounded by brilliant people who'd always known they wanted to help others heal. I felt like an imposter sometimes, the girl who'd let a man define her, who'd needed to be destroyed to find her strength. But my advisor, Dr. Meredith Villa, saw through my doubt during our first meeting. You have something many students don't, she said, reviewing my application essay. You understand trauma from the inside. That's not a weakness, Aleigha. It's your superpower. It doesn't feel like power. Not yet, but it will. She leaned forward. The best therapists aren't the ones who've never been broken. They're the ones who've been shattered and learned how to put themselves back together. You're going to help people do the same. I carried those words with me through the brutal first semester, through late nights studying attachment theory and ethics codes, through my first awkward attempts at mock counseling sessions where I second-guessed every intervention. Trenton was there through all of it. When I had a panic attack before my first practicum evaluation, he held me and reminded me to breathe. When I aced my midterms, he bought a cheap bottle of champagne and we toasted in plastic cups. To Dr. Randall, he said, clinking his cup against mine. I'm not a doctor yet. That's years away. But you will be, and I'll be here to see it. The certainty in his voice made me believe it too. By winter break, his business had grown enough that he could afford actual office space, a small suite in a co-working building. I helped him move in, just like he'd helped me. We're doing it, he said, standing in his new office. Both of us, building the lives we want. Together, I added. Together, he agreed. But success, I was learning, came with unexpected complications. The better I did in school, the more confident I became, the more my thoughts drifted to the question I'd been avoiding. What happened to Brennan? I'd blocked his number, deleted him from social media, erased him from my life. But occasionally, someone from my old world would surface. A former acquaintance, a LinkedIn connection. And in those brief intersections, I'd catch glimpses. Brennan had married Johanna 6 months after throwing me out. The wedding was featured in Society magazines. Billionaire developer weds socialite in lavish Connecticut estate ceremony. I saw the photos once, accidentally, when someone tagged a mutual connection. She looked beautiful. He looked the same. Cold eyes, perfect suit, arm around her waist like ownership. I felt nothing. Not jealousy, not satisfaction, not even anger. Just a distant acknowledgement that he'd moved on to his next acquisition. You okay? Trenton asked that night. I'd been quiet through dinner. I saw he got married, I admitted. Brennan. To the woman he was cheating with. Trenton was quiet for a moment. How do you feel about that? Honestly, nothing. I feel nothing. Is that wrong? It's healthy, he said. It means you've healed. He doesn't have power over you anymore. He was right. Brennan was my past. Trenton was my present. And my future. Dr. Aleigha Randall, therapist, healer, survivor, was mine to build. The years that followed were full in the way truly lived lives are. I completed my master's degree with honors, then continued into the doctoral program. Trenton's business expanded to 12 employees. We moved in together, a real apartment with actual furniture and a kitchen table and space for both our dreams. We talked about marriage sometimes, in abstract terms. But neither of us felt rushed. We'd both learned that love wasn't about grand gestures or public declarations. It was about showing up, every day, through the mundane and the difficult and the beautiful. It was about choosing each other again and again, without contracts or ultimatums. By the time I defended my dissertation, Therapeutic Interventions for Intimate Partner Emotional Abuse Survivors, Trenton was in the front row, so were Layla and Kaylee, so was Dr. Villa, beaming like a proud parent. Dr. Randall, the committee chair announced, shaking my hand. Congratulations. Dr. Randall, I'd done it. The girl thrown out in the storm had become a doctor. After the celebration dinner, Trenton and I walked through the same park where we'd had our first real conversation years ago. I'm proud of you, he said simply. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. You were always going to do this, Aleigha. I just got lucky enough to witness it. I squeezed his hand, grateful beyond words for this man who'd seen me at my lowest and loved me through my climb. 6 months later, I opened my private practice, Randall Counseling Services, PLLC. A modest office in a professional building. 3 days a week to start, while I maintained my position at the University Counseling Center for Stability. Within a year, I had a waiting list. My specialty, helping survivors of emotional abuse reclaim their identity, resonated. Word spread. Referrals came. Professional recognition followed. By year 3, I'd been featured in a local magazine as one of the city's top mental health professionals under 40. The article mentioned my research, my approach, my commitment to accessible therapy. It mentioned nothing about storms or billionaires or the night that had forged me. That part of my story was mine alone, or so I thought. Until the day my receptionist, Jayla, buzzed my office with an unusual request. Dr. Randall? I have a new patient inquiry. Referral from attorney Jamil Donahue. The client is requesting your earliest availability. He says it's urgent. What's the presenting issue? Marital dissolution. Trust issues. Recent traumatic discovery. She paused. Dr. Randall, the client's name is Brennan Dobson. The name hit me like ice water. After 7 years of silence, the man who'd tried to erase me was asking for my help. To see. I stared at the phone for a full minute after Jayla's words, my heart pounding in a rhythm that felt both foreign and familiar, like muscle memory from a life I'd left behind. Brennan Dobson, 7 years. 7 years of building myself, healing, becoming someone I was proud to be. And now his name appeared on my schedule like a ghost demanding acknowledgement. Dr. Randall? Jayla's voice crackled through the speaker. Should I schedule him or refer him elsewhere? Professional ethics dictated I should refer him. You don't treat people you have personal history with. Dual relationships compromise therapeutic boundaries. This was Counseling 101. But something deeper, something that had nothing to do with my doctoral training and everything to do with the woman who'd stood in the rain, made me pause. What's his availability? I heard myself ask. He's requesting as soon as possible. His attorney indicated it's urgent. Urgent. The word tasted bitter. When I'd been urgent, stranded, desperate, broken, Brennan had driven away without looking back. Schedule him for next Wednesday, 2 o'clock. Are you sure? I can refer him to Dr. Singh or... I'm sure, Jayla. Thank you. I ended the call and sat in the silence of my office. The walls were decorated with my degrees, my certifications, testimonials from clients whose lives I'd helped rebuild. This space represented everything I'd clawed my way toward. And in 5 days, Brennan Dobson would walk through that door. That evening, I told Trenton. We were cooking dinner together, our Wednesday ritual, when I set down the knife I'd been using to chop vegetables. I got a call today, I said carefully. A new patient referral. Okay? He glanced up from the stove where he was stirring pasta sauce. It's Brennan. His hand stilled. Your ex-fiancé Brennan? The one who... Yes. Trenton turned off the burner and faced me fully. Aleigha, you don't have to see him. You know that, right? You can refer him out. No one would question that decision. I know. I scheduled him anyway. Why? It was the question I'd been asking myself all afternoon. Why would I willingly invite that man back into my life, even professionally? Why risk the peace I'd so carefully constructed? Because, I said slowly, working it out as I spoke. For 7 years, I've wondered if he ever thought about that night, if he ever regretted it, if he ever realized what he threw away. I met Trenton's eyes, and because I'm good at what I do, if he's genuinely in crisis, I can help him. Not because he deserves it, but because helping people heal is who I am now. Trenton crossed the kitchen and pulled me into his arms. You're a better person than I am. I want to punch him for what he did to you. I laughed despite myself. That's not very therapeutic. Good thing I'm a software developer and not a counselor. He pulled back to look at me. But seriously, are you sure you're ready for this? No, I admitted. But I don't think I'll ever be ready, so I might as well do it now. The next 5 days crawled by. I prepared for the session the way I prepared for all initial consultations, reviewing my intake forms, clearing my schedule for the full hour, setting my intentions for the therapeutic space. But I also did something I rarely did. I looked Brennan up online. What I found stunned me. The society pages that had once celebrated his wedding now chronicled his divorce. Dobson Ashcroft split turns ugly, billionaire developer faces paternity scandal. I clicked through articles with growing disbelief. 3 children. Johanna had given him 3 children over the course of their marriage. And according to court documents that had been unsealed during the divorce proceedings, DNA tests revealed none of them were biologically his. The articles were brutal. They detailed Johanna's affair with her personal trainer, Jason Cornwell. They described how she'd orchestrated the deception for years, letting Brennan believe he was raising his own children while systematically emptying his trust fund for her lover. The man who'd once controlled everything had been deceived in the most devastating way possible. I should have felt satisfaction, vindication, some twisted sense of justice. Instead, I felt something uncomfortably close to sadness. Trenton found me reading at midnight, my laptop casting blue light across our bedroom. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "He lost everything," I said quietly. His marriage, his children, or who he thought were his children, his reputation. The articles are vicious. And I don't know how I feel about it. I spent years imagining some version of karma catching up to him. But now that it has, I closed the laptop. It just feels hollow. "That's because you're not the vindictive type," Trenton said, settling beside me. "You wanted him to understand what he'd done to you. That's different from wanting him destroyed." "Is it, though? Isn't that what I've been building toward? Becoming successful enough that if he ever saw me again, he'd regret everything?" "Maybe at first," Trenton said thoughtfully, "but that's not who you are now. You became Dr. Randall because you wanted to help people." "He's just a person who happens to need help. A person who treated me like I was disposable." "Yes, and you get to decide if you're capable of separating that history from your professional responsibility. There's no wrong answer here, Aleigha." Wednesday arrived wrapped in gray skies that threatened rain, a cruel cosmic joke I tried not to read meaning into. I wore my favorite professional outfit, tailored navy pants, a cream blouse, my doctoral graduation watch, armor disguised as confidence. At 1:55, Jayla buzzed. "Dr. Randall, Mr. Dobson is here." My pulse kicked up. "Give me 2 minutes, then send him in." I used those 2 minutes to center myself. This was my space, my expertise, my rules. Whatever power Brennan had once held over me existed only in memory. The man who walked through my office door looked nothing like the billionaire who'd thrown me out of his car. Brennan had aged badly. His expensive suit hung looser than it should, like he'd lost weight rapidly. Gray threaded his temples. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He moved with the tentative gait of someone who'd been broken and wasn't sure how all the pieces fit together anymore. He stopped just inside the doorway when he saw me. His face went through several emotions in rapid succession: shock, disbelief, recognition, shame. "Aleigha?" My name came out as a whisper. "Dr. Randall?" I corrected gently, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "Please, have a seat, Mr. Dobson." He stood frozen. "I didn't know. When Jamil referred me, he said the best therapist in the city. I didn't know it was—" "It's all right," I said, maintaining professional calm even as my heart raced. "Take a seat. We can discuss whether you're comfortable proceeding with me as your therapist, or if you'd prefer a referral." He moved like a man in a dream, sinking into the chair. His eyes never left my face. "You became a therapist," he said, voice hollow with wonder. "I did." You, you look. He stopped himself. I'm sorry. That's not appropriate. It's your first session. We're still establishing boundaries. I pulled out my intake form, clicking my pen. Let's start with why you're here, Mr. Dobson. Your attorney mentioned marital dissolution and a recent traumatic discovery. He laughed. A broken, bitter sound. That's one way to put it. And just like that, the man who'd once called me nobody began to tell me how his own world had shattered. Brennan sat across from me, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. 7 years ago, those hands had gripped a steering wheel while he ordered me out of his life. Now they trembled. The DNA test came back 6 weeks ago, he began, his voice scraped raw. My lawyer, Jamil, he'd been suspicious for months during the divorce proceedings. Johanna was demanding ridiculous amounts in child support, and something about her math didn't add up. I took notes, my pen moving across the paper with practiced neutrality. This was a skill I'd honed over years, the ability to hold space for someone's pain without drowning in it. Go on, I prompted when he fell silent. Marcus is 7, Vivian is 5, Elijah is 3. He said their names like a prayer. I was there when they were born, cut their umbilical cords, walked Marcus to his first day of school, taught Vivian to ride a bike. His voice cracked. I was their father. The biological results don't erase the relationship you built with them, I said carefully. Don't they? He looked up, and I saw the full devastation in his eyes. The courts say I have no legal claim because Johanna's convinced them I was never really their father, that I was just convenient, a wallet with a last name. I let the silence stretch, giving him space to feel what he was feeling. This was the work, sitting with someone in their worst moment and not rushing to fix it. She's married him, Brennan continued, the words coming faster now like poison he needed to expel. Jason Cornwell, the personal trainer I hired for her after Vivian was born. She married him 2 weeks after our divorce was finalized. They'd been together for 10 years, and I never... He pressed his palms against his eyes. I'm supposed to be smart, successful, in control. How did I not see it? Deception thrives when we trust, I said. It's not a reflection of your intelligence. It's a reflection of her betrayal. He dropped his hands and stared at me. Really stared. How are you doing this? Doing what? Sitting here, listening to me. After what He couldn't finish. Aleigha, I threw you out of my car in a storm. I called you nobody. I tried to destroy your life because I was too arrogant to listen, too convinced of my own judgment to question if, maybe, possibly, I'd been lied to. There it was. The acknowledgement I'd wondered if he'd ever make. We're here to discuss your current crisis, Mr. Dobson, not our shared history, I said, keeping my voice steady. But if that history is preventing you from being able to work with me therapeutically, we should address it now. I don't deserve your help. Therapy isn't about deserving, it's about need and willingness. Do you need help? Yes. The word came out broken. Are you willing to do the work? He nodded. Then we can proceed. But I need your informed consent. You need to understand that while I'll maintain professional boundaries, I'm not a blank slate. I'm a person you hurt. I've healed from that hurt, but it exists. If at any point you feel that history compromises your treatment, you can request a referral. Do you understand? Yes. Do you want to continue with me, or would you prefer I refer you to a colleague? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I want to continue, if you're willing. Because maybe you're the only person who can understand what it feels like to have someone take everything and make you question if you were ever worth anything at all. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who'd made me question my worth now sat in that same space of doubt. Tell me about the moment you found out, I said, redirecting to the clinical work. The DNA results, Walk me through that day. He did, haltingly at first, then in a flood. The manila envelope from the lab, opening it alone in his office, reading the percentages that added up to 0, the numbers that erased fatherhood, calling Johanna and her laughter, actual laughter, when he confronted her. She said I should thank her for letting me play daddy, he whispered. That any man can donate sperm, but it takes someone special to be used so completely and never notice. I wrote quickly, noting the language of emasculation, the calculated cruelty, the systematic destruction of identity. Have you had contact with the children since learning this? I asked. No. Johanna's blocked all communication, changed her number. The house, our house, she got it in the divorce. I drove by last week and they'd changed the locks, the gate code, everything. His voice dropped. There's a new playground in the backyard. Jason built it. He's there now playing with kids who used to call me Dad. What does grief look like for you right now? I don't sleep. When I do, I dream about them. Marcus asking me to help with his homework, Vivian showing me her drawings, Elijah. He stopped, composing himself. Elijah called me Papa. He couldn't say Daddy yet, so it was always Papa. His first word was my name, and now I'm not allowed to hear his voice. This was ambiguous loss, grieving people who were still alive but unreachable. One of the most painful forms of grief because there was no closure, no ritual, no clear path forward. Mr. Dobson. Brennan, he interrupted. Please. Mr. Dobson sounds like we're strangers, and we both know we're not. I considered this. Professional boundaries suggested formality, but authentic therapeutic relationship required meeting clients where they were. Brennan, I amended, what you're experiencing is a valid form of grief. You've lost children you love, a marriage you invested in, and a version of yourself you understood. That's not weakness. That's trauma. I don't know who I am anymore, he admitted. For 10 years I was a husband and father. Before that, I was... He stopped, looking at me with something like recognition. I was someone who used people, who measured worth in utility, who threw away anything that didn't serve me. The room felt suddenly smaller. Is that what you think you did to me? I asked, carefully clinical. I know what I did to you, and I've known for 7 years. He leaned forward. The night I threw you out, I got home and Johanna was waiting. She'd orchestrated the whole thing, the fake texts, the photos, everything. She confessed it within an hour, laughing about how easy it was to manipulate me. She wanted me to go back and get you, grovel, prove how desperate I was. My pen stilled. But I couldn't, he continued. Because going back would mean admitting I was wrong, that I'd made a catastrophic error in judgment, that I'd hurt someone innocent because I was too proud to question my assumptions. He met my eyes. So I married her instead, doubled down on the lie, and she spent the next 7 years making me pay for it. If this were any other client, I'd explore the pattern, the way he'd chosen pride over accountability, ego over truth. But this wasn't any other client, and these revelations landed in a complicated space between my professional duty and my personal history. How does it feel to tell me this now? I asked. Like standing in a storm, he said quietly, waiting for someone to pull over and offer shelter, knowing I don't deserve it, hoping for it anyway. The parallel was intentional. He was handing me power, the chance to leave him stranded the way he'd left me. But that wasn't who I'd become. Our time is almost up, I said, glancing at the clock. Before we end, I need to establish some things. First, what you shared today stays in this room. Confidentiality is absolute unless you're a danger to yourself or others. Second, this work will be difficult. We'll be examining patterns, traumas, and choices that are painful to confront. Third, I paused. Our history means I'll need to consult with a supervisor to ensure I'm providing ethical care. You should know that. Whatever you need to do, he said. Thank you for not sending me away. Brennan, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this because it's my job, because helping people heal is what I've dedicated my life to. What happened between us is separate from what happens in this room. He nodded, but something in his expression suggested he heard the subtext. I've moved on. You're just a client now. As he stood to leave, he paused at the door. You really did it. Became someone extraordinary. Everything I said you couldn't be without me. Yes, I said simply. I did. After he left, I sat in my office for a long time, staring at my notes. The session had been professionally sound. I'd maintained boundaries, used appropriate interventions, documented thoroughly. But my hands were shaking. That evening, I told Trenton everything. We sat on our couch, the one we'd picked out together, in the home we'd built together, and I processed the session with the one person who'd never made me question my worth. He knew, I said. He knew within an hour that he'd been lied to, and he chose to marry her anyway rather than admit he was wrong. How do you feel about that? Professionally, it's a pattern we'll need to explore. Personally? I leaned into Trenton's shoulder. I'm grateful. If he'd come back that night, I might have forgiven him, might have stayed, and I never would have become this. Dr. Randall, brilliant therapist, my favorite person, Trenton said, kissing my temple. Exactly. But as I fell asleep that night, I couldn't stop thinking about Brennan's face when he'd seen my degrees on the wall. The shock, the regret, the devastating realization of what he'd thrown away. The revenge I'd once imagined had been dramatic, him seeing me succeed and falling apart. The reality was quieter, more profound. He'd lost everything that mattered while I'd gained everything I'd never known I needed, and the only person who'd destroyed him was himself. Over the following weeks, Brennan became a regular fixture in my schedule. Wednesdays at 2, like clockwork. Each session peeled back another layer of his unraveling. He talked about the depositions where Johanna's lawyers had eviscerated him, about the social circles that had closed ranks, choosing her narrative over his, about waking up in a penthouse that felt like a mausoleum, surrounded by evidence of a life that had been a performance. I had this painting, he said during our fourth session. In the living room. Marcus drew it in kindergarten, just stick figures and a sun, but he'd labeled us Papa, Mama, me. I paid $3,000 to have it professionally framed. His voice went hollow. Johanna threw it out the day after I moved out. I saw it in the trash when I came back for my things. I watched him grieve the small losses as much as the large ones. The bedtime stories, the inside jokes, the way Vivian would fall asleep holding his hand. These weren't biological connections being mourned, they were human ones. Love didn't require DNA. The court doesn't see it that way, he said bitterly. According to the judge, I was never really their father, just a man who lived in their house for a while. But you see it differently. I was their father in every way that mattered. I was there. I loved them. I would have... He stopped, struggling. I would have died for them. Doesn't that count for something? It counts for everything, I said quietly. The courts measure legal relationship. That's different from the emotional truth of what you experienced. Something in my tone made him look up sharply. You understand this, don't you? Not just therapeutically, personally. I kept my expression neutral. What makes you say that? The way you talk about love versus obligation, connection versus contract. Like you've had to learn the difference the hard way. He wasn't wrong. Brennan had taught me that lesson himself. That legal papers and social performance didn't equal authentic relationship. That real love showed up even when it was inconvenient. We're here to discuss your experience, I redirected gently. But Brennan was watching me with new attention, the kind that made me grateful for the professional boundaries between us. By the sixth session, we'd moved into deeper territory, his patterns of control, his fear of vulnerability, his tendency to measure worth in utility rather than humanity. I built an empire, he said, but I never built a life. Everything was transactional, including— He stopped himself. Including your relationships, I finished. Yes. He looked at me directly. Including you. I thought I'd acquired you. Like a painting or a car. Something that reflected well on me. I never saw you as a person with your own dreams, your own worth independent of what you added to my image. This acknowledgement should have felt validating, satisfying. Instead, it just felt sad. Recognition coming 7 years too late to matter. What would you say to that version of yourself now? I asked. The man who thought that way? That he was going to lose everything because he was too stupid to recognize value when he had it. Brennan's jaw tightened. That karma doesn't care how much money you have. That eventually you become what you do to others. You think this is karma? Johanna deceiving you because you deceived others? Don't you? I considered my answer carefully. I think you're experiencing the consequences of patterns you established. Control, transactional relating, inability to trust. Those patterns didn't cause Johanna to betray you. Her choices are her own. But they did shape how you related to people, what you accepted, what you ignored. I ignored red flags with her because I was too proud to admit I'd made a mistake leaving— He caught himself. Leaving my previous relationship. We both knew he meant me. The room felt charged with unspoken history. Brennan, we need to address something, I said, setting down my pen. We can't continue therapy effectively if we keep dancing around our shared past. We either name it and work through how it impacts your treatment, or I refer you out. Which would you prefer? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, name it. All right. 7 years ago, you ended our engagement in a cruel way because you believed a lie. You refused to listen, refused to investigate. You damaged me significantly. Emotionally, financially, socially. I kept my voice steady. I've healed from that damage. I don't carry anger toward you anymore. But that history exists, and it informs my understanding of your patterns. Does it make you less objective? Possibly. That's why I'm consulting with a supervisor. But it also gives me insight other therapists wouldn't have. I know what you're capable of when you're wounded. I've seen how you operate under threat. And you're still willing to help me. I'm willing to do my job. That's different from forgiveness or reconciliation. Do you understand the distinction? Yes. He looked at me with something that might have been admiration or might have been regret. You became someone I could never have understood back then, someone with actual integrity. People change when they're forced to, I said. You gave me no choice but to rebuild myself. Johanna gave you no choice but to examine yourself. Pain is a powerful teacher. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I'd come back that night? If I'd apologized instead of marrying her? The question hung between us, dangerous territory for a therapeutic relationship. That's not a productive line of inquiry, I said professionally. We can't rewrite the past. We can only work with what is. But later, alone in my office after he'd left, I let myself consider it. Would I have taken him back? Forgiven him? Given up graduate school in Trenton and Dr. Randall to return to being Brennan's acquisition? The thought made me physically ill. Whatever Brennan had lost, I'd gained so much more. Not just professional success or financial stability, but authentic selfhood, the ability to look in the mirror and recognize the person looking back. That night, Trenton proposed. We were cooking dinner, nothing special, just a regular Wednesday, when he turned off the stove and got down on one knee in our kitchen. "I don't have a ring yet," he said, pulling out a twist tie from the bread bag. "But I have a question. Aleigha Randall, will you marry me?" I started laughing and crying simultaneously. "A twist tie? It's symbolic. We built this from nothing, remember? Started with takeout containers on your studio floor. This is just the next iteration of that, building something real from whatever materials we have." "Yes," I said, pulling him up to kiss him. "Yes, of course, yes." He slid the twist tie onto my finger, and it was the most beautiful ring I'd ever worn. The next Wednesday, Brennan noticed immediately. "You're engaged," he said, his eyes catching on the actual ring Trenton had bought me over the weekend, a simple sapphire that caught the light like promises. "I am." Something crossed his face, pain, regret, resignation. "He's lucky, the man who gets to marry you." "I'm lucky too. That's what partnership means." "What's he like? Your fiancé?" This was walking the line of appropriate therapeutic conversation, but something in Brennan's tone suggested he needed to hear this, needed to understand what he'd missed. "He's kind," I said simply. "He sees me as a person, not a possession. He celebrates my success instead of feeling threatened by it. He showed up during the hard parts without needing credit or control." I met Brennan's eyes. "He's everything I needed and didn't know I deserved." Brennan nodded slowly. "Good. That's good, Aleigha. You deserve that." It was the first time he'd said my first name in session, and it felt like closure of a kind. An acknowledgement that while we'd never be friends, we could exist in this strange space, where I helped him heal from wounds I partially understood, because he'd once inflicted similar ones on me. "We should talk about your path forward," I said, gently redirecting. "You've been in crisis mode for weeks. It's time to start thinking about reconstruction." "How do I do that? Reconstruct a life when everything I thought I knew was false?" "The same way anyone does. One choice at a time. One boundary at a time. One moment of honesty at a time." I leaned forward. "Brennan, you can't get your children back through the courts. We've established that. But you can work on becoming the kind of man who doesn't make his worth dependent on controlling others. You can build authentic relationships instead of transactional ones. You can learn to sit with uncertainty without needing to dominate it." "That's the work. That's the work." He was quiet, absorbing this. Then, "Will it be enough? Will becoming a better person make up for the years I lost?" "No," I said honestly. "You'll never get those years back. But you can make sure the years ahead are different. That's not redemption. It's just choice, made over and over again in small moments, until patterns shift." If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts. These complex character arcs mean so much to me, and your engagement keeps this story alive. As Brennan left that day, I watched him walk down the hallway with slightly straighter shoulders. The work was beginning, not the dramatic transformation people imagine therapy to be, but the slow, unglamorous accumulation of small insights and difficult choices. And I realized something that surprised me. I wanted him to succeed. Not for my sake or his, but because healing someone, anyone, was worth the effort, even if that someone had once tried to break me. 3 months into our therapeutic work, Brennan's transformation became visible. He'd started volunteering at a youth mentorship program, not in his usual pattern of writing checks from a distance, but actually showing up, sitting with teenage boys who needed father figures, listening instead of directing. "One of the kids called me Mr. B yesterday," he told me during our session. "He's 15, father's in prison. He was telling me about wanting to go to college, but he doesn't think he's smart enough." Brennan's voice caught. "I told him intelligence isn't about where you start. It's about refusing to quit, and I realized I was giving him advice I'd never followed myself." "How so?" "I quit on you. On us. The second things got difficult. I ran instead of fighting for the truth. He looked at me directly. I've spent my life measuring people's worth by what they could do for me, and the moment I thought you couldn't serve me anymore, I discarded you. We'd been circling this for weeks, his pattern of conditional regard. But this was the first time he'd named it so clearly. What does that realization bring up for you? I asked. Shame, regret, the knowledge that I'm exactly what I accused Johanna of being, someone who uses people. He exhaled slowly. The difference is, she knew what she was doing. I convinced myself I was just being practical, efficient, protecting my interests. And now? Now I see how much I lost by operating that way. Not just you, not just the kids, but myself. I became a transaction. Everything I did was calculated for return on investment, including my relationships. He leaned forward. You asked me weeks ago what I'd say to my younger self. I think I finally know. Tell me. I'd tell him that people aren't acquisitions, that love, real love, doesn't audition for the role. It just shows up, messy and inconvenient and completely unconcerned with your portfolio. His eyes were bright. I'd tell him the woman he's about to throw away will become extraordinary without him. And that's exactly what he deserves, to watch her shine from a distance while he sits in the wreckage he created. The words should have felt like vindication. Instead, they felt like grief. For the man he could have been if he'd learned these lessons earlier, and for the years we'd both lost to his inability to see clearly. That's significant progress, I said professionally. You're developing insight into your patterns and taking accountability for their impact. Is it enough? Enough for what? To be forgiven. By you. The question landed like a challenge. We'd maintained careful boundaries for months, but here he was, asking me to step out of my role as therapist and into the space of the woman he'd wronged. Brennan, forgiveness isn't something you earn through therapy. It's not a transaction. It's a gift the wounded person gives themselves, deciding to release anger so it doesn't poison them. I forgave you years ago, not because you deserved it, but because I deserved peace. I held his gaze. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. It doesn't restore what was lost or create relationship where there isn't one. I've forgiven you. That doesn't mean I trust you or want you in my life beyond this therapeutic context. I understand. But his face said otherwise. Said he'd been hoping for something more. Reconciliation, maybe, or the chance to rewrite our ending. Do you? I pressed gently. Because I'm getting the sense that part of your healing process includes a fantasy where I see your growth and decide you're worth a second chance. He flinched. Am I that transparent? You're human. It's natural to want redemption from the people you've hurt. But that's not my job. My job is to help you become healthier, so you can build better relationships moving forward. Not to become one of those relationships. Even though you understand me better than anyone, especially because I understand you. I know what you're capable of when you feel threatened. I've seen how quickly you can turn on someone you claim to care about. I softened my tone. That's not judgment, Brennan. It's data, and it's information I use to maintain appropriate boundaries. He sat with that for a long moment, then quietly, I'm going to prove you wrong. Wrong about what? That I'll always be that person, the one who runs when things get hard. His jaw set with determination. I'm going to become someone worthy of trust. Maybe not yours. I understand that ship has sailed. But someone's. And when I do, it'll be because you helped me see what I couldn't see in myself. After he left, I sat with the weight of his words. This was the complicated reality of my work, helping people transform while maintaining boundaries that prevented me from experiencing that transformation personally. Brennan was changing. I could see it in how he talked about the boys he mentored, in his willingness to sit with discomfort, in his growing capacity for empathy. But change didn't erase history. It just created the possibility of a different future. That weekend, Trenton and I went wedding planning. We'd chosen a simple ceremony, just family and close friends in Layla's garden. Nothing like the elaborate spectacle I'd once planned with Brennan. "Are you okay?" Trenton asked as we sampled cake flavors at a local bakery. "You've been quiet." "Just thinking about how different this is," I admitted. "Last time I planned a wedding, it was all about appearances. The right venue, the right photographer, the right impression. This time, this time it's just about us," he finished. "Two people who want to build a life together." "Exactly." I squeezed his hand. "I'm grateful it fell apart with Brennan. If it hadn't, I never would have found this. No regrets? Not a single one." But that night, I dreamed about the storm, about standing on the highway watching taillights disappear. Except in the dream, Brennan's car stopped, reversed. And when I got back in, I was wearing my wedding dress, the one I'd ordered 7 years ago and never picked up. I woke up gasping, and Trenton pulled me close. "Bad dream?" "Just processing," I said. "My subconscious working through things." Because that's what therapy with Brennan was forcing me to do, revisit that night from new angles. See him not as a villain, but as a broken person who'd broken others. Understand that hurt people, and healing wasn't linear or simple. It made me a better therapist. But it also made me tired. By our 6th month of sessions, Brennan had made remarkable progress. He'd established regular volunteer commitments, started his own therapy for complex trauma, began reaching out to people he'd wronged over the years with genuine apologies. "I tracked down my college roommate," he told me. "Jason. Different Jason, not Cornwell. I'd stolen his business idea senior year and made millions off it while he was working 3 jobs to pay off student loans." "What did you say to him?" "The truth, that I'd taken his concept without credit or compensation because I thought being smart meant exploiting opportunities regardless of ethics, that I was sorry, that I wanted to make it right." "How did he respond?" "He laughed at first, thought I was joking or setting up some new scheme. Then when he realized I was serious, he just—" Brennan's voice went rough. He said, "Man, I forgave you years ago. I had to, or it would have eaten me alive. But thank you for saying it." Then he told me about his life. He's a teacher now, loves his work, has 3 kids. He's happy, Aleigha. Happy without the millions, without the empire. Just content. "And how did that make you feel?" "Like I've been chasing the wrong things my entire life." He looked at me with clear eyes. "I built an empire but never found contentment." He built a life and found peace. Who's really successful? This was breakthrough territory. The reframing of values that indicated deep psychological shift. "What does success look like to you now?" I asked. "Waking up and recognizing myself. Going to bed without regret. Showing up for people because I want to. Not because it serves my interests." He paused. "And maybe, someday, being the kind of man a woman chooses, not because of what I can give her, but because of who I am." "That's beautiful, Brennan. And achievable, if you keep doing this work." "Will you be there?" he asked suddenly. "At your wedding? Can I—" He stopped himself. "I'm sorry. That's inappropriate. I don't know why I asked that." But I knew why. He wanted closure of a different kind. Wanted to witness what he'd lost become real for someone else. Wanted to prove he could celebrate my happiness without bitterness. "I don't think that would be appropriate," I said gently. "Our relationship is therapeutic, not personal. Inviting you would blur those boundaries in ways that wouldn't serve either of us." "Of course, you're right." But disappointment flickered across his face. "However," I continued, "I think we should start discussing transition. You've made significant progress. You're stable, insightful, actively engaged in your healing. You might be ready to step down to bi-weekly sessions or consider graduating from therapy altogether. You're terminating me? I'm suggesting we evaluate whether our therapeutic relationship has accomplished its goals. That's not abandonment, Brennan. It's success. He was quiet for a long time. Then, if this ends our sessions, do I ever see you again? Probably not. Our worlds don't naturally overlap. So I lose you twice. You never had me to lose, I said, not unkindly. You had a fiancé you didn't value, and now you have a therapist who helped you heal. But you never had me, the actual person I am now. And that's okay. That's how it should be. The session ended with that truth hanging between us. Some endings don't get rewritten. Some losses stay lost. And that's not tragedy. It's just the cost of choices made in moments of pride and fear. As I walked to my car that evening, I thought about how far we'd both come. Brennan from arrogant billionaire to humble seeker. Me from devastated fiancé to accomplished healer. We'd both been destroyed by that storm. We'd both rebuilt. But we'd built entirely different lives, in entirely different directions. And there was grace in that divergence, proof that you could help someone heal without needing to be part of their healed life. That night, Trenton found me staring at my wedding binder. Having doubts? He asked, only half joking. The opposite, I said, pulling him down beside me. I'm just grateful, for you. For this, for becoming someone who knows the difference between performance and partnership. Brennan taught you that? Brennan taught me what I didn't want. You taught me what I did. I kissed him softly. There's a difference. 3 weeks later, Trenton and I got married in Layla's garden, under string lights and a forgiving sky. My sister officiated. Kaylee cried. Barbara from the coffee shop brought homemade tiramisu. My cohort from graduate school showed up with terrible speeches and genuine love. It was small, simple, real. Everything my first wedding would never have been. And as I said my vows to a man who'd seen me at my lowest and loved me through my climb, I realized something profound. The best revenge wasn't Brennan seeing me succeed. It was me finding joy so complete that his opinion of it didn't matter at all. 2 years after the wedding, I stood in the lobby of the Riverside Community Center, watching families filter in for the annual Volunteer Appreciation Dinner. My practice had grown to include 2 associate therapists, and I'd just accepted a position as adjunct faculty at the university, teaching the next generation of counselors about trauma-informed care. Trenton was beside me, his hand warm in mine. His business had expanded to 30 employees, and he'd just launched a nonprofit arm offering free tech services to domestic violence shelters. We'd bought a house. Nothing extravagant, just a cozy craftsman with a porch and a garden where we grew vegetables neither of us knew how to cook properly. Life was good, full, authentically ours. Dr. Randall? A voice called from across the room. I turned to see Denise Dumas, the center's director, waving me over. There's someone who wanted to meet you. He's one of our most dedicated volunteers. She led me to a corner where a group of teenage boys clustered around a man I recognized immediately, even though he looked different. Lighter, more present. Brennan. He looked up when we approached, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, nervousness, maybe a touch of pride. Dr. Randall, he said formally, extending his hand. I didn't know you were involved with the center. I provide pro bono counseling services, I explained, shaking his hand briefly. Have for the past year. And you? Mentorship program. 3 years now. He gestured to the boys around him. These guys keep me honest. One of the teenagers, maybe 16, with kind eyes and an easy smile, spoke up. Mr. B's the best. He helped me get into college, full scholarship to state. That's wonderful, I said sincerely. Congratulations. Brennan's smile was genuine, unguarded in a way I'd never seen during our engagement. Tommy did all the work. I just showed up and believed in him when he didn't believe in himself yet. It was such a far cry from the man who'd measured worth in transactions that I felt something shift in my chest. Not attraction or longing, just acknowledgement. He'd done the work, actually changed. Well, both of you should be proud, I said. Denise pulled me away to meet other volunteers, and the evening flowed on. Speeches were given, awards presented. Brennan received recognition for his 3 years of consistent mentorship. Over 1,000 hours logged, 12 boys successfully placed in college programs. When he accepted his plaque, he spoke briefly. I spent most of my life believing success meant accumulation, more money, more power, more control. But these young men taught me that real success is measured in moments. The moment you see someone believe in themselves for the first time, the moment they realize their past doesn't dictate their future, the moment they discover they're worth fighting for. His voice went soft. That's wealth. Everything else is just numbers. The room erupted in applause, but Brennan's eyes found mine across the crowd. There was no longing in his gaze, no regret, just acknowledgement. A silent thank you for helping him find this version of himself. After the ceremony, as people mingled over coffee and dessert, Brennan approached me one final time. Trenton had stepped away to take a work call, so we stood alone by the windows overlooking the center's basketball courts. I didn't know you volunteered here, he said quietly. I can find a different organization if this is uncomfortable. Why would it be uncomfortable? We're both doing good work. The community needs all the help it can get. Still, I know boundaries matter to you. They do. But our therapeutic relationship ended a year ago. You're stable, healthy, doing meaningful work. We can exist in the same volunteer space without issue. I studied him. How have you been? Really? Good. Better than good, actually. He glanced at the boys on the basketball court. I'm dating someone. Her name is Aleigha. She's a school counselor, works with at-risk youth. We met through the program. That's wonderful, Brennan. She knows everything. About Johanna, the kids, about... He paused. About you. About what I did. I told her all of it before our third date because I didn't want to build anything on omissions again. How did she respond? She said everyone deserves a chance to be who they've become, not who they used to be. But she also said if I ever made her feel like a transaction, she'd walk without looking back. He smiled. I respect the hell out of that boundary. She sounds wise. She is, and patient, and completely unimpressed by money or status, which is refreshing. He looked at me directly. I wanted to thank you for not giving up on me when you had every reason to, for helping me see that redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about making different choices moving forward. You did the work, Brennan. I just held space for it. Still, you could have sent me away that first day. Most people would have. Maybe. But I didn't become a therapist to cherry-pick easy cases. I do this work because I believe people can change if they're willing to face themselves honestly. I paused. You were willing. That made all the difference. Trenton returned then, sliding his arm around my waist. Everything okay? Everything's fine, I said. Trenton, this is Brennan Dobson. He volunteers with the mentorship program. Brennan, my husband, Trenton Asher. The two men shook hands, and I watched Brennan's face carefully. No jealousy, no bitterness, just genuine warmth. Your wife is an exceptional person, Brennan said, but I suspect you already know that. Every single day, Trenton replied easily. Good. That's really good. Brennan nodded to both of us. I should get back to the guys, but it was good to see you, Aleigha. Both of you. As he walked away, Trenton looked at me with raised eyebrows. That was the ex? That was the ex. He seems different than how you described him. He is different. People can change, given the right circumstances and genuine willingness. I leaned into my husband. But change doesn't rewrite history. It just creates new possibilities. Are you okay, seeing him? Completely okay, I said honestly. He's part of my story, but he's not part of my present. There's a difference. We stayed for another hour, talking with other volunteers, watching the community come together around shared purpose. As we finally headed to the car, I caught one last glimpse through the windows. Brennan laughing with his mentees, completely engaged, fully present. He'd become someone worthy of respect, just not from the position of my life, from the position of his own. You know what's wild? I said as Trenton drove us home. 7 years ago, I fantasized about him seeing me successful and regretting everything. But tonight, when he actually saw it, I felt nothing but peace. Because revenge stopped mattering? Because I realized it was never about him at all. It was always about me, proving to myself that I could survive, rebuild, thrive. His opinion was just noise. I reached over and squeezed Trenton's hand. The real victory wasn't making him regret losing me. It was building a life so full of genuine love and purpose that his loss didn't leave a hole. At home, we changed into comfortable clothes and settled onto our couch, the same couch where we'd shared countless meals, conversations, and quiet evenings. The house smelled like the lavender Trenton had planted by the porch. Our wedding photos lined the mantel. My degrees hung in my home office. His Employee of the Month awards from his team cluttered the bookshelf. Evidence of a life built from intention, not obligation, from partnership, not possession. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if he'd come back that night? Trenton asked, echoing the question Brennan had posed years ago in therapy. Sometimes, I admitted, but only in the way you wonder about alternate timelines. Curious, but grateful it's not yours. If he'd come back, I probably would have forgiven him, stayed, convinced myself his apology meant change. I turned to face my husband. I never would have become Dr. Randall, never would have met you, never would have discovered who I could be when I wasn't busy being who someone else needed me to be. So the storm was a gift? The storm was devastating, I corrected. But what I built from the wreckage? That was the gift, one I gave myself. Later that night, as I prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back bore little resemblance to the girl who'd stood in the rain 7 years ago. Same face, maybe, but different eyes. Stronger posture, a peace that went bone deep. Dr. Aleigha Randall, wife, therapist, professor, survivor, thriver. All the things Brennan said I could never be without him. My phone buzzed with a text from Layla. Saw your post from the volunteer dinner. So proud of you, sis. Look how far you've come. I typed back. Look how far we both came. Couldn't have done it without you. Her response was immediate. You did it yourself. I just held the umbrella while you learned to dance in the rain. I smiled, setting down my phone. She was wrong. I'd needed her, needed Kaylee, needed Barbara and Dr. Villa, and eventually Trenton. Needed all the people who saw my worth when I couldn't see it myself. But she was also right. In the end, I'd been the one to choose healing over bitterness, growth over stagnation, purpose over revenge. Those were my choices, my victories. Trenton appeared in the doorway, toothbrush in hand. You coming to bed? In a minute. He patted over and wrapped his arms around me from behind, both of us looking at our reflection. What are you thinking about? How lucky I am. How grateful. How completely content with exactly where I am and who I'm with. No regrets? not even one. He kissed my temple and headed to bed, leaving me alone with my thoughts for one final moment. Somewhere across town, Brennan was probably lying awake too, processing our encounter, hoping I'd seen his growth, wanting confirmation that his transformation mattered. And it did matter. For him, for his mentees, for Aliana, for everyone his changed life would touch. But it didn't matter to my happiness. That was the lesson that had taken me 7 years and a doctorate to learn. Other people's growth, change, or regret couldn't validate my worth. Only I could do that. I'd been enough the night he threw me out of his car. Enough when I served coffee for $13 an hour. Enough when I applied to 17 graduate programs from a studio apartment that barely fit a bed. Enough when I said yes to Trenton with a twist tie ring. I'd always been enough. I just needed to be destroyed to believe it. As I finally climbed into bed beside my husband, pulling our shared blanket over us, I thought about all the women standing in storms of their own. The ones being told they're nothing without someone else. The ones doubting their worth because someone treated them as disposable. I wanted them to know what I'd learned. The person who throws you away doesn't get to define your value. The storm doesn't get the final word. And sometimes, the best revenge is no revenge at all, just the quiet triumph of becoming everything they said you couldn't be, for no one's approval but your own. If this story resonated with you, if you've survived your own storm or you're still standing in the rain, I hope you know you're not alone, and your next chapter can be anything you choose to make it. I love you, Trenton mumbled, half asleep. I love you too, I whispered back. And as I drifted off to sleep, I realized something profound. I'd spent years trying to prove Brennan wrong about my worth, but the moment I'd truly won was when his opinion stopped mattering at all. That was freedom. That was healing. That was the ending I'd built for myself, one choice at a time, one boundary at a time, one moment of self-love at a time. The girl in the storm had become a woman who danced in the rain. And that transformation, wholly mine, utterly earned, was the greatest revenge of all. Thank you for staying with me. I hope my story inspires you to choose the way of love and kindness above revenge. Well, the best revenge you can get is to be the better and best version of yourself. Kindly subscribe to my channel and comment where you are watching from and what you think about my story. I would be glad to see your comments.